Welcome to the Whitetail Advantage podcast with your host, Brett Bovin. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Whitetail Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Brett Bovin. Sorry for the late start on this show, folks. But either way, the show has finally started. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for tuning into the Whitetail Advantage podcast. I do ask, where have you been this entire time? But you know what? Hey, thank you for tuning in. Where do we want to start here? It's episode 65. We're in Maine. Like I said, if this is your first time tuning in, we do a week. We spend 3 days in a state, do a live show Monday through Wednesday. And we bring on a new guest. Tonight, we have not just one, not just two, and not even just three. We have multiple guests for tonight. And I'm looking forward to tonight's show. The one thing that I do ask from everyone is, you as the listeners, the audience, is to put your quarter in the slot machine. What I mean by that is to help share the show. Hunting is a dying sport, dying lifestyle. And we're trying to help spread the word of hunting, and we're doing the best that we can. We can't do it without you guys' support. Thank you for everyone that is helping support the show. It really means a lot to us here at the Whitetail Advantage, and I can't say thank you enough. But enough of the spiel. Everyone's heard it before. Let's give a warm round of applause for tonight's guest, the Big Buck Woods. What is up, everyone?
Hey, how are you?
How's it going?
It ain't Big Buck Woods. It's Big Woods Bucks.
I got it backwards.
I'm caught that, Hal.
Yeah, I had to call him out right off.
Yeah.
I apologize for that.
Yeah. Those Midwest boys, you know how they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, let's go around the room, starting with Lee. Lee is going to be kind of like an avatar, but let's go with Lee, Chris, Hal, Neil, Mark, Musk, and then Mark.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Lee. I don't know exactly what you're looking for here, but I've been part of Big Woods since the beginning. Hal and Chris asked me to be on. Must have been close to 20 years ago, wasn't it, Chris?
Oh, yeah, a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Proud to be part of the team, and proud to be here tonight representing the great state of Maine and all the whitetail hunters from the Northeast.
Yeah, I'm Chris Dalty, and I'm the co-founder of Big Woods Bucks. And I had the privilege of starting this business with Hal quite a few years ago. And the reason why I wanted to start this business with him, because when I first met him, I heard all these stories. I was a stand hunter, and when I got to know him a little bit, I heard all these stories about his encounters with these animals. So I kept telling my wife, this guy either walks on water or he's full of shit. Well, I found out that I don't know if he walks on water, but he does. All those stories are true. And so we decided to start a business, and I got to chase him around with a camera for quite a few years. And it grew quick enough that I couldn't do that anymore. So we've been just growing and trying our best to share our adventures with people and help people to become the best hunters that they can be. So that's really our mission, and we're proud of that mission. We have a lot of fun along the way. We have a great bunch of guys, good camaraderie, and we have a ball chasing those whitetails around. So basically a very abbreviated introduction to how Big Woods Bucks was started.
Guess I don't have to say nothing, huh?
That's not like you.
When we first started, Chris appointed me as the president. So I guess that's what I am. That means I don't have to do anything but go hunting. At least that's what he told me anyway. So, and then we got it started with the idea when I wrote my first book, and he wanted to share that information with people in film. So we started that way. Back in the old days when you put an actual tape in the camera, it wasn't digital. That's how old we are. So anyways, we put the team together, and we've had lots of good people come on, and some came and left, but I guess we got probably the best team ever, and a lot of them are the original ones we started with, and they're all great guys. We have good time together, good hunters, and they all like to share their information and know-how with anybody that wants to listen. Right, Neil?
Yeah, so I guess I'm one of the newer members on the team. I've been on the team for 2 years now. So for me, I mean, I became a team member because I started following Big Woods Bucks, went to some of the seminars and sat in on Hal's talks, and became friends with some of the team members. And then I've been honored to be a team member and learn from the guys, and just keep hunting hard and doing what I love to do. The team's known for tracking, but I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I do bow hunting, tracking, stand hunting, whether it's on the ground. So, I mean, I think that I was kind of brought on the team to do a little bit of everything. I'm in a different area where a lot of us, I'm from Maine, but I know I also hunt a lot in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and all throughout New England. But I know the next guy, he's also a big bow hunter too. So I'll pass it off to Jeff now.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait.
Oh, no.
You got to tell them your title. What's your title? The show organizer now or whatever?
Oh, I thought you were going to tease me about recently officially moving to Massachusetts. Oh, yeah. So
no, I wasn't going to mention that.
Whoa.
You hung yourself.
But yeah, so my title is the director of trade shows and events for Big Woods Bucks.
And he earned that from his college days, how to organize parties and stuff.
I have a little bit of experience there with parties.
Holy mackerel! I guess.
What exactly does that entail?
I heard that today from Jeremy, Neil.
Oh, Jeremy told you some good stories?
Oh, some good ones.
Oh, yeah. So I went to Plymouth State University, and we won't get into too many of the stories, but a couple of the guys heard a good one when we had our spring thaw event recently. And so it entailed a little bit of Jello wrestling, but we'll leave it there. So.
Funny. Oh,
Yeah.
So I changed my name. I didn't know that it was on Muskox, so I just changed it. Kind of figured it out. But yeah, Jeff Paradis. I've been on. I don't know how long you've been on the team now. 5 years or so, or something like that. Yeah. So, I enjoy it tremendously. I mean, it's. I like the camaraderie with the team. The guys are just amazing. And like Neil said, everybody says, I mean, we're kind of like a family. We all get along. Our wives communicate. It's just something special. So I'm also a big bow hunter. I do a lot of different things. I travel around a lot, travel different states. I've been, all the way from Africa to the North Pole, bow hunting, and just doing what I do best, And I don't think it's so much a dying thing anymore. I think I think it's coming back a little bit. I see more and more young guys around, especially with our events. I mean, what we do. So I'm optimistic with it. But anyways, with that being said, I'm going to pass it right off to Mark.
Hi guys. My name is Mark Sheron, and I am a New Yorker, so don't hold that against me, from the great communist state of New York. I met Hal and Chris in 2006. Yeah, 2006. Became a team member, I don't know, 8 years ago. And I was just fascinated with the big woods. It wasn't just about the hunting. I was fascinated by the Adirondacks, Maine, anything that was not farm country, because I grew up in farm country, shotgun country. And once I got bit by the tracking bug, that's really all I think about is whitetails and tracking. So, but I'm also, I'm sort of a consultant with Big Woods Bucks. I have a different business, so I'm sort of a part-timer now, but a full-time team member. But yeah, it's all about spreading the education and I agree with Jeff. I think that there's a resurgence, at least in the Northeast, and what we've done certainly contributed to that for sure. There is definitely more people in the big woods than there has been in 20 years. So this part of the country is sort of the unknown thing, but it's pretty fascinating to watch it grow.
That's awesome to hear that you guys are having the youth kind of resurgence up there in Maine, because I know here in Michigan the numbers were kind of steadily declining. So the age where kids can start hunting kind of they changed around here, and then once 2020 hit, you saw a spike. It was like an 8% spike in the COVID year, but then ever since then it's kind of started steadily going back down. But it's awesome to hear, though, up there in Maine. When I think of Maine, it's a tough environment to go out there and hunt, and to see that you guys are having more of a growth. It's really awesome to hear.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I think that's happening is, one of the things that I wanted to share in the beginning was, how was it not only a great hunter because he's gifted, but I wasn't, and I learned from him. So first I wanted people to know that it's like a learned ability, some of this stuff. I can be the best that I can be. Probably not going to be as good as some people, but it's okay. I can be the best that I can be. But woodsman skills make all the difference in the world. And that's exactly what we try to share, teach, however you want to say it. Because when you are a good woodsman and you have persistence, it makes up for any shortfallings that you might have.
Yeah. And I strongly believe that with this new generation, and I'm just going off based of what my knowledge and experience here in Michigan is, a lot of these kids, they're not the mental strength, the mental fortitude, or the mental capacity. I don't want to say capacity, but the patience isn't there. And it's that with TikTok and these shorts and stuff like that, they want that quick 15-second satisfaction. When they see these videos out there, it's like, oh, they're getting a deer and they're doing it extremely quick, but they're not seeing the backside of it, the months and the preparation that go into it. And I think that's something that needs to be pointed out there as well.
I saw a really good quote on Facebook today. It was talking about sports, but it said, talent will make you good, but only hard work will make you great. And that applies to everything in life. And I think that's what we're all about. Big Woods Bucks is hard work and persistence.
Yeah, I think a lot what we do too is that we're always engaging, no matter where we go at our seminars or whatever. We're willing to engage with people constantly, and we're not standoffish. I mean, like you said, our relationship between all of us is it's more of a family, but we bring that to the table when we come to our shows or to our seminars, and we engage with everybody. So I think that's a big thing with us too. It just proceeds us out forward.
Yeah, I think that for a long time, the Northeast was filled with secrets. Like the whole culture of it was very regional, and you didn't know. It was like family. You'd have a camp that was a family camp, and they had their customs, and it was sort of secret. And what Big Woods Bucks, I think, did was we give away the gold. Our whole mission is to provide people with an education so that they understand that they can do this, that they can actually go out and track down a buck in the big woods, which is very hard to do. But eventually you get to a point to where you have the confidence to be able to do it all the time, or at least every time you enter the woods, you feel like you have a chance. And so, yeah, I think giving away the gold has been the key for our success, because we're not afraid to tell the secrets. And that's why people love what we do.
Yeah, and then because, especially in the Northeast, it's like anyone looking to get into hunting or is younger into hunting, they're obviously looking for resources, whether it's a podcast now, it's like with those short attention spans and videos, and having the content out there from us and Big Woods Bucks and other creators in the Northeast is geared towards the tracking now. So it's become really popular. And I think that's why a lot more people are getting, introduced to that style of hunting. They're bored. They don't want to sit in tree stands. They want to get away from, where they live and just venture out. And I think that adventure of exploring the big woods is a huge allure to people. And there's a romance to it. And that's what calls people. And, for us to be able to have that spotlight, to share the stories, I think it really inspires people to get out there and make it happen. And of course, Hal's done a pretty good job at inspiring, a lot of people with, his stories, his books, his videos. I think a lot of people have seen that stuff, but just the content that we put out, I think is a big part of it.
Yeah, I'd like to say that the other part of it too, with all the team members is almost half of them, I think, have sons or daughters that are on the team or a part of it, and that second generation, and now my grandson's old enough to be, so we got a third generation coming along here. So that's what will keep it rolling.
Yeah, and they're enjoying, Brett. They're enjoying learning woodsman skills. I know my son. When I taught him how to light a fire in the rain, or I saw him thrive when he finally figured out that he can navigate through the woods, which is a real stickler for a lot of people. They're afraid to get lost, and so when you overcome that, you also gain confidence that you bring into life. So I think that's why all of us feel like there's a resurgence. It's fun to do those things too, with your grandson, with your son, with your family. My wife hunts. Many of our wives hunt. Jeff's wife hunts. And before I forget, that's Mike Stevens down the bottom right there. I'd like to give him a minute to say hello and
yeah, of course.
say who he
Yeah,
is.
Mikey.
Yeah.
Old guide Mike, what was you doing? Taking a nap?
Well, we lost the internet at the house about 20 minutes ago.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. When you know it, and you know me, I can fix anything, huh?
In the woods.
So anyway, I'm on my phone. I can barely hear you, but at least I'm here.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to be. I just caught a little bit of the last conversation you had going about our interaction with people.
Yeah.
And I was just throw in there is like when we do seminars, and that's the only time we ever really get to sit down with our people unless they're in our hunting camps, huh? And it's probably a mystery to them. They go, geez, I wonder what this guy Neil's like. I wonder what this guy Jeff's like. And, they get a chance to find out what we're like, because we pretty well talk to them in layman's terms. And we pretty much talk to them just like we talk to anybody sitting around the camp having a beer or just talking, hunting stories. So that's one of the things that I always get out of our interaction with the folks, and then they find out that, geez, these guys are for real.
Yeah.
And we shoot a few bucks to boot, yeah.
Moose.
Old guide Mike is the most seasoned citizen on the team. He's got me by 3 years.
Yeah.
That breaks down to the oldest fight.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of tracking up there in Maine. What exactly does that entail up there in Maine? Whoever wants to take that question or everyone wants to handle that. What does that entail? What's start to beginning?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Harold.
That entails, in the beginning, it entails following a deer track, and a lot of people do that or can do that to a point. They can follow a track till it gets in with a bunch of other ones, or gets in the water, or does something like that. But you take that to the next level, and then you become a deer tracker. You're not a follower, you're a tracker, because you you understand what the game is, and you've learned what a buck might do, and then you try to outwit him that way on the track, because it's his whole life story is written in the snow for you, and you just have to interpret it. So that's really the simple answer, I guess.
Yeah, Shanzi, you said tell your philosophy about tracking. I can't see you, but I know your wheels are spinning up there.
Well, one of the things that really struck me when Hal got a hold of me, again, it was probably like around 2000. Hal's 9 years older than I am, and he did everything in life about 9 years before I did. So when I got to know him, I was just starting my guide business, and everybody told me I was going to have a really hard time starting it because instead of doing it with bear hunting over bait and stuff like that, I was doing it with tracking deer in the snow. And the thing that really struck me was that Hal and I were both self-taught. We just got on the track and taught ourselves how to do it. We might have read some books and things, but if you do it long enough, everybody has their own style, but people will come up with the same conclusions. If they've done it long enough, you'll find that you think a lot alike. And again, everybody has their own style, but in order to become a successful tracker, you got to put a lot of hard work and patience into it. And then almost all your learning was through error. You failed a bunch of times. What's that old saying about, I think it was Thomas Edison that said, he failed to make the light bulb like 25 times or whatever, but it really wasn't failure. It was the road to making a light bulb that worked. And that's the same thing with tracking. And again, I just thought it was really funny when I was talking with Hal that we came to the same conclusions because we were both doing same things, on the track.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's like, I really kind of think in some ways it's why I really like tracking is because you just walk up and shoot them. In some ways it's not that easy, but that's what you're doing versus sitting in a stand and waiting and having to pattern deer and try to put all this time into analyzing. And then you're relying on the deer to do what you need it to do to even get near or close to you. So there's so many other factors where you're in control, you're in the driver's seat when it comes to tracking, you're on the offensive. And for somebody who's, hunted out of stands, I never really cared to sit. I didn't have the patience for it. I always wanted to get down and explore, but I didn't really like still hunting because I didn't like staying still. I like just going and covering ground. And that's what tracking allowed for me to do. And kind of like Hal said earlier, is that for a long time, I just followed deer tracks. I hadn't really put the pieces together. And then not having much experience doing it because during where I hunted, we didn't often get snow during hunting season. So then coming to some of the seminars, reading some of Hal's books and hearing some of the things, I started to put the pieces together. And then it made sense that, this is how you track a buck down. And then from there, it just having the experience that I had in the woods, it in some ways just became an easier way to kill and target big bucks versus sitting in a stand and waiting for them.
Yeah, for me, tracking was like you're living the life of the deer as you go down his track. So everything that happens in his life, you're interpreting. The better you get at it, and he's teaching you a lot of the behaviors that he has. A lot of the animals have similar behaviors, but they also have a unique personalities. So it's really cool to figure out certain things about each buck that you're going on. And the other thing I figured out early on when I started chasing Hal with a camera was that there really is a deer at the end of that track, because when I was standing, I live in Rhode Island. So when I was stand hunting in Rhode Island, it would be like they would disappear. I wouldn't have a clue where they were. And all of a sudden, out of the fog one morning, or, they just appear and you end up shooting them. Well, running one down and then as you're running him down, learning his habits. But then when you see him or you get a crack at him, it's intoxicating. It really is. It's once you get bitten by the bug, it's hard to do anything else. And all of those skills can be applied to any animal that you hunt.
And I think Chris, you hit upon something that is one of the reasons I love tracking so much. Is every day is a new adventure, and every deer is different. Every day is different. And I'm the kind of guy, I don't put out game cameras. I try to go to a new place every day because there's enough land to do that. I used to go to same spots that I was successful at, but now I'm at the point where I'm really enjoying the adventure of it. And it's just fascinating to be up there and be tracking one down. And my son said something at one of our seminars. He goes, because he's successful now. And he said, you collect all this data chasing the deer, like Lee was saying. And then one day you realize that it's just intuition. You don't even understand why you understand this. It just all kind of clicks. And when that happens, you feel like a tracker. And there's a moment in your career where that happens, where all the pieces come together and you've built your style. And I think that it took me a long time to do that. But once it happened, I've been very successful, and it's fun. I don't think there's a better way to hunt ever.
How are you starting off this tracking style of hunting? Like, when you're going out there and you're ready to go hunt and you're going to start tracking them, for someone out there that's never done that type of hunting before, what's the first thing that you're thinking, all right, this is how I should start, and then this is how I should follow through and to get on success with it?
Where the snow is.
Yep.
It's going to find the snow.
It's kind of important.
That's a huge part of it. And I know when I talk to people and we do seminars, like a lot of times people, they say, well, I don't get to track much because where I live, there isn't snow. Well, you gotta be willing to drive. If you don't live in a place where there's snow, you got to travel. So you have to kind of think outside of the box, whether it's looking at snow reports, whether it's, calling places, or using social media now, but you have to go where there's snow and when there's snow. So that's the first that's the number one rule. I mean, everybody will travel. They maybe travel 2-3 hours, travel to a different state. You just got to go where the snow is.
I know when I was starting off hunting, there was a time I started when I was 12 years old, and I shot my first deer there. And then the next year after that, I got another deer. And then when I was 14 to about 16, I didn't see a deer at all. And I was like, man, I'm just not seeing anything. So next thing I know, the idea came to me where it was like, you know what? As soon as the hunting season's over, I'm going to wait till snowfall hits and wait a week and then let the deer kind of peck down where they're going the most. So I can tell what trails are being used the most compared to ones that are least traveled on. And next thing I know, I'm learning more about the land. I'm learning more where these deer are kind of moving through the property. I'm just getting down and dirty and learning a ton more. And now I've been doing that year after year. I just feel like that's helped my game on my level.
Yeah, you're using the snow to find a deer. It really starts if you're a tracker and that's what you want to do. Every day starts out with finding a track that you want to follow, and that's it. Some people ride the roads and do it. Other people get in the woods and do it. But you got to have a track to start on, and then the day evolves from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing I know that like a lot of people, they're kind of interested to learn about in the Northeast is that we're very fortunate to have all kinds of land that we can hunt, which isn't the case in a lot of other states where you're not allowed to hunt on private land. But we're lucky with land use laws that as long as it's not posted, private land is essentially considered public in many ways. So to try to find these areas, especially in big woods where a lot of it's owned by paper companies, we have just vast wilderness. So that whether you're riding around or you're just hopping out of your truck and going for a walk, you don't really have to worry about boundaries and property lines and things like that. So that's one of the advantages of hunting in Maine or other states in the Northeast.
Yeah, we're really blessed because the state of Maine, you could just about divide it in half, but the northern half of the state is basically open to everybody. There's a few small sections maybe where you can't hunt, but basically half of the state of Maine, anybody can hunt it, and that's the half where you're more likely to get snow. And also if you end up getting on a track, you'll be less likely to be cut off by somebody else because it's bigger pieces of property. And not that you don't get cut off occasionally, but that's another thing that we hadn't touched on is if you're going to get on a big buck track, if you spend all morning finding a big buck track, you hope that it's going to be one that you're going to be able to chase all day without somebody else cutting you off. And in Maine, that's not usually a problem.
Yeah.
Well, the northern half, I don't know how many, but there's millions of acres that you have access to. And along with that goes the snow. It also goes, that's where the bigger deer are, the northern half of the state. Your chances of shooting a big, heavy-bodied buck or a mature buck is far greater than probably anywhere else you'd hunt.
I did hear that. I was talking to Steve on Monday. He said people don't really necessarily look at the antler size. The bragging rights are down to the how big the deer actually weighed out at.
That's right.
Yeah, that's strictly a New England thing. Yeah, it's all about the weight. It's weight size versus antler size. I'm the opposite. I'm all about antlers. I'm not too partial about weight, but listen, when you're tracking, the bigger the track, the bigger the deer, so to speak, so.
Yeah.
The other thing to go along with that, Brett, is when we're talking about weights in Maine, according to the rules that are set up for the biggest buck in Maine club, it has to be 200 pounds, and that's with no guts at all in it, no heart, lungs, liver, nothing. That's completely gutted out with no insides. And 200 pounds, that's the starting point. But something that we did in Big Woods Bucks a few years ago, just to make it more fair for some of the guys that hunt in New Hampshire and New York and other places where the deer don't run as heavy as ours, but they might have a little better antlers. In the Big Woods Buck Pool, we combine the weight of the deer and the inches on the antlers and get it combined. And so the person that wins the big buck pool for Big Woods Bucks, it's actually a combination of antlers and weight, and it's worked out really good.
How long have you guys been doing that now?
Probably 5 years, I would think.
Yeah.
I'm the treasurer, so I know, but it's I think it's been 5 years.
Yeah, did you get Neil's money to him?
No.
Yeah, I had that discussion with Neil night before last, Hal. I called him, and I've got to collect from some people. So I think what's going to happen is when we have our get together at Powland Lodge next month, people better bring their checkbooks or their cash because we're going to dump it on Neil then.
All
Give me
right.
that list, Neil. Shanzi, I'll put some heat on those guys.
Well, the conversation that I had with Neil was I don't mind being the treasurer and taking care of it, but what we'll have to do is we'll have to have a set time before the season. And I don't care if people want to send me a check, it's fine, but we'll just have to make sure that we get the money ahead of time so I'm not running around chasing people for it.
It's always the worst part, trying to collect all the money.
Right.
Yeah, it's a high stakes pool too.
Yeah.
Bragging rights.
It's definitely with this team, bragging rights are everything. Yeah.
Neil won last year. Would you tell him what you killed?
Oh, it was it was a buck. It dressed at 232 pounds and was 147 inches.
Wow.
So
Big boy.
yep.
No kidding.
That wasn't in northern Maine either.
No, I was gonna say it was in New Hampshire, and it wasn't tracking either. That was out of a stand. Because like I said in the beginning, I kind of do it all. So it's like I'll sit and stand. I'll bow hunt. I'll run cameras. Closer to home and try to learn and pattern deer. And that buck in particular, it's all about annual patterns. I mean, 2 bucks that I've gotten over the last 2 years were exactly a year to the day to when I first encountered them. I mean, within an hour, actually, 365 days within exactly to an hour. So, so there is something to annual patterns there. But yeah, I think just getting back to what we were talking about with, the weights and everything, it's got me kind of thinking, because nowadays, a lot of times when people ask, like, how big a deer was, sometimes they're talking about inches and rack score. But I know when I was growing up, when the question said, well, how big was it? Everyone was referring to body weight, because there'd be tagging stations, which is usually at your local store. and there'd be a list of all the names of people that tag deer, and there'd be a weight beside most everyone's deer. And so that's what everyone was looking at and referring to. And secondary was how many points did it have, but nobody even talked or discussed inches, like scoring and that type of stuff. I never even heard about it until, I think it was probably 10, 15 years into hunting before I even heard about rack scores or anything like that, because it was all about the weight.
Yeah,
Like
I
you said,
don't.
that's a New England thing.
Yeah, but a lot of that comes, Brett, from if you know you're on a big buck because of all of the little indications that we see in the snow. A lot of times you don't get to see that. That's the first time you ever see that buck. And a lot of times they're disappearing through the firs, and it's that buck. It's a big, mature buck based on, his stride, his stance, and all of the factors that lead up to determining that it's a big buck. And so you're flinging lead, not really paying attention. You don't have time to count that's a 120. I'm going to let him go. It's not nothing like that. It's a rush, and it happens quickly.
And where I hunt in the Adirondacks, in the central to southern Adirondacks, we don't have a lot of those big 200 plus dressed deer. What we have is, you could have a huge racked buck and he might weigh 135 to 155 pounds. So when I'm tracking, sometimes I'll take a track that's relatively small and it might look like a 2.5-year-old to Maine standards, and it's not. And so I have to look. Where I hunt, I have to look for other sign, like where did the antlers hit? How did he go around a tree? Did his legs swing out? Did he swing his neck around? So I'm looking at not just the track, I'm looking at where the antlers hit. How tall is the rack? When he went through a spruce bog or whatever. And did he knock the snow off that limb? And how tall is that? And how wide is that? And, so and I think that's true of everybody. Every good tracker is looking at those things no matter what. But in New York, I've tracked bucks that had a track that looked like a tiny little buck. And the biggest rack buck I ever chased, I have his sheds. He was 162 inches, and I guarantee he didn't weigh more than 145 pounds. So for us, it's a little different. In Maine, then when I go to Maine, I have to totally recalibrate and go, okay, they're so much bigger. Sometimes I've tracked does in Maine that would have been a tank of a buck in the Adirondacks. So when you go regionally, sometimes you have to recalibrate everything you're thinking.
If someone's coming out to Maine, what's the first thing that they should think of or prepare themselves to go out when they're starting to go hunt there in Maine? Because it sounds like Maine, deep woods, not a lot of deer. What's the first thing that they should start preparing themselves for if they want to start going out there hunting on their own?
Mentally. You have to have the mental game in order. You can't fear the woods, so to speak. A lot of guys, the fear of getting lost. You can't fear that when you're tracking, because you're going to be gone all day, and God knows where they're going to take you. You could be 14 miles from your truck, and at the end of the day, you're coming out at night. So I think the biggest thing for a lot of guys, and we hear that a lot on our seminars, is that mental aspect of it. The fear of getting lost deters a lot of guys. Most of us that do this are not afraid of going in the woods and getting lost. That's what actually we're looking for, to get away and get out there. But just preparation. We're all prepared for it. So I think that's one of the big things.
You got to be in shape too to walk. You got to be in shape to walk all day. And our woods is we have steep country here, but not all of northern Maine's like that. But it's all full of blowdowns and crap in the woods, so it's not just like you're probably used to out there. You got a lot of open hardwoods probably and stuff like that. Here you're crawling over stuff, around stuff, under stuff all day long. It's like an aerobic exercise. But so you got to be prepared for that and go wherever a buck goes. And you also have to have the right clothing, in which is wool here. And I know if you're not used to moving around, if you hit sitting in stands, all the fancy modern stuff is great, but if you're gonna try to get close to a buck in the woods at close range, you better have your woolies on so you can be quiet, warm, and not get cold.
Yeah, you're in for a long day if you get wet.
Yeah, so what I want to underscore what Jeff said about. So one of the things that we were able to, Hal had a guide service for a long time since I met him, and we had a lot of clients that have come through and tried all kinds of different clothing. So we've proved that out, that what's the best type of clothes to wear for the tracking thing. But most of the guys that, I'd be behind the client with a camera, and the client would be behind Hal, and 3/4 of them would rather have had a rope tied to them to ever see Hal or me walk away from them. So what I want to say about that is navigation is a huge part of building that confidence to be able to step off the road. So if people want to learn how to navigate correctly, we just did a YouTube video that Hal did on navigation. It's a really good resource to start off with. And it builds that confidence that you can step off the road, because they are big territories no matter where we go. When we went to Ontario, we had big territories. When we've hunted all over the northern half and of North America, chasing these things. And so when they're mature, they know their territory. They sometimes have to go long distances to get to the different doe groups. If you can't follow them because you're worried about where you are, you're not concentrating.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things would be to set realistic expectations. I'm huge on setting goals, and if somebody was coming to Maine for their first time, especially if they don't have experience tracking, I would say their goal would probably just be gaining experience and just taking in and forming the memories of going out and in the Maine woods and seeing different areas they've never seen before and exploring those woods and hopefully getting an opportunity. But I wouldn't even bank on necessarily having that opportunity or shooting even a mature buck, let alone maybe even seeing a buck. So I just think that's a huge part of it, is that for someone to feel like they accomplished and were successful in the trip, because I don't want to see them set themselves up for failure. It would really be just gauging the expectations, that it's more going to be the experience and the memories that are going to be formed in the hunt than the actual success of the hunt.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The one thing that you're going to find out that we all have in common, especially all the guys on the team, is that we never give up. There's not a moment. As soon as we jump out of that truck, no matter what we're doing, we're going from dark to dark, and we're not going to stop. And because we have a goal at the end of the day, once you meet that goal, like Neil says, you got to succeed. You can't go half throttle with it. You have to go all the way. You either go big or go home. That's kind of the motto, So we all have mental drive, and we all have that motivation, self-motivation to get it done. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that goes on with the whole thing. I mean, it's just not one. You can't determine it by one thing. There's a big, broad picture of it. What makes a successful hunt, Yeah. And like Hal says, there's a reason why 10% of the guys shoot 90% of the deer. It's a big thing is the motivation and the drive. We're always at it.
One thing I want to say is, so we talk a lot about Maine and coming to Maine and stuff, but I would invite everybody to go into their woods and learn their deer too. You can practice. I live in the smallest state of the Union. I live in Rhode Island, and I found 14,000 acre tracts of land just by wanting to be able to roam around. And that's where you're going to learn navigation, is to get out. Once you watch, you read Hal's book, or you listen to one of his videos, or all of the videos that we have on YouTube about the different woodsman skills, go out there and practice that stuff. It's fun. You're going to gain confidence, and you're going to kill some more deer in your area, let alone then come to Maine and use those tactics or skill sets that you do. So It doesn't have to be in Maine. It could be any place in the world, pretty much. When you become a hunter and have those skill
Yeah.
sets, you can kill anything anywhere.
You guys, correct me if I'm
Have
wrong.
fun
You guys
is the big thing.
you guys do trainings where on navigation, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hal has a YouTube video that he just completed. It's
Yeah,
comprehensive.
compass course. The
Yep.
compass course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the compass
Yeah.
course, right.
Map and compass. Yep. That's on there.
And if people have questions, they can always email any of us. We have our emails on the website. We're willing to help. We want to see everybody succeed. We want to
Yeah.
see everybody enjoy what we are privileged to enjoy, you know?
Yeah, Chris hit it right on the head. I mean, absolutely. Anybody can call us, any of the team members. We're always open to help. That's our big thing, is just to help out. Somebody has an issue or they need advice. I might have something that works for them. Neil might have something that works for somebody else. Mark, Hal, Chris, we have a broad spectrum of it, but where the biggest thing is that we want to help. You know, this is not just about us. When I was asked to join the team, they asked me, listen, why wouldn't you want to take all your knowledge over the years and just help somebody, for maybe just that one person? And yeah, I said yeah, and it worked out. I mean, it's a great feeling being able to help people navigate, to hunt, to get their skills up. It's just a good feeling. It feels good to do it, you know.
I think also that one of the things that we have at Big Woods Bucks is we have equipment. We have a wool line, we have the pants, the jackets. And then you have a guy like Lee Shands who's totally encyclopedic when it comes to, rifles and hand loading and then you have the bow hunters, and then you have Hal who knows everything under the freaking sun. Right.
Yeah.
So there's such a wealth of information that we want to give to people. And frankly, it's not bullshit. Right. I mean, I'm just talking like a guy here, but the truth of the matter is when you've spent decades guiding, and if you combined all the years, it would be like a century of guiding thousands and thousands of people in some of the roughest country, some of the wettest, coldest, most miserable country in the world. Right. And you take all that experience, and every person on the team has a different style. Right. So people can match that style up just by listening to us on podcasts like this. I'm not as fast as Hal, or certainly not as fast as Neil. I'm a lot slower now. And I found a lot more success by doing that. So there's little tricks of the trade that I found. Shanzy is like the best person I know to take on a newcomer and explain things. He's like a super teacher. So everybody's got their thing. And I think that that's something that we value deeply.
Yeah.
For me, my internal compass, I like that. My dad instilled that into me right away. He's like, you got to have an internal compass. So he basically threw me out in the woods and he spin me around in circles and trying to figure out, all right, where's north, where's west, where's east, south, stuff like that. Have you guys how do you guys teach that to people that just don't have that internal compass to start building that inside them to know, all right, if you're facing this way, what's going to be your fastest way to know this is going to be north, that's south, east, west? What have you guys kind of been doing up there?
Tell them how.
Well,
Go for it, guy.
quite frankly, some people just don't have it, and they're never going to have it. I know people that are my age that they'll get lost in a 10-acre piece. They just have no sense of direction. And the only thing you can tell people like that is, well, the main thing is carry a compass. But, if the sun's out, the sun basically comes up in the east, sets in the west, and it's in the south during the day. But, you're not always going to have a sunny day. But if you're going to hunt in this country, you need a compass anyway. You could get into a snowstorm or anything where you need one. But a sense of direction is helpful, but you can't teach it to people. I've guided enough people to know that I used to ask my clients, we'd be way in the middle of nowhere on a buck track, and I'd quiz them, which way's the truck? And about half of them would have a pretty good idea. They'd be within, you know, probably 10 or 15 degrees either way, you know, a quarter of a circle. But the other ones would just shake their head and say, I have no idea. So that's just part of it. Doesn't mean you can't, if you don't have a sense of direction, doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just that you're going to rely on a compass more. And I tell them, you know, and nowadays with GPS and the OnX and all that stuff, it's helpful, but you can't totally rely on it because it's electronic equipment. But you can trust your compass for sure and your maps. So that's what I tell people.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think that's where technology has come in for those guys to give them the confidence, even though, like Hal was saying, yeah, I mean, batteries can die. It's like, you know, phones can stop working, but I mean, that's, you know, in rare occasions now, it's like, especially if you bring, you know, extra battery packs to recharge your phone. But, you know, we use OnX, which is an amazing app. It allows you to navigate the woods with ease. Once you learn how to use that, you can see where you are, what direction you're going. You can see terrain features. It's just endless with, you know, what it offers to allow you to, you know, navigate in and out of the woods. And then especially the big woods of Maine, they're not, you can't go probably more than a mile without hitting some kind of road or some type of, you know, like path that'll get you back out to civilization eventually if you keep walking on it. So it's not like being in New York and the Adirondacks. We have just, you know, these vast stretches where you could go 15, 20 miles, you know, before you hit another road. Luckily in Maine, you don't have that. So once you overcome that fear, because whether it's a compass or using OnX, then you can finally just go and just send it in the woods.
You know, I'm that guy that got quizzed, and I'll never forget it because I said he quizzed me. It was our first day, and he said, "You know where the truck is?" I said, "Yeah, it's over there." And he said, "No, it's behind you, Mark." You know, and they all sort of giggled at me, Chris and Hal. And I've never had a really good sense of direction. So that question that you ask is how would somebody like myself gain the confidence? Because I'm in the Adirondacks and I have total confidence. And the way I do that is when I get out of the truck every time, I always have a paper map of the area I hunt. And I orientate that map and I look around and I orientate the earth to myself. Then at least I have a clue. And that's really important for me. And then I figure out where the road is and which direction, which side of the road am I on, and just the fundamentals. Now, what's interesting, what Neil said is I can get mixed up in Maine easier than I can in the Adirondacks. In the Adirondacks, I have a road that goes 50 miles one direction. And then I don't have to worry as long as I know which side of the road I'm on, which hemisphere, right? Then I just got to go the opposite direction to get home, to get back to that highway. So I figured out some of these basics that totally put my mind at ease. But if I didn't have a compass, I would be screwed because I don't have that ability to really orientate myself after I've been on a track for 10, 20 minutes. I'm just so engrossed in what I'm doing, I lose all sense of it. So I'm one of those guys.
I'd just like to reiterate some of the things that we just talked about, just because it might save somebody a hassle or a night in the woods. The majority of the time when I'm in the woods, I'm guiding somebody else. I do get to hunt on my own occasionally, but most of the time I've got other hunters that I'm dragging around. And everybody on the team would tell you I'm one of the older guys and I'm old school. Everything I do is old school. So I've got a pin-on brass marbles compass that my parents gave me when I was 10. So I've had it for almost 50 years. And that's usually how I get around in the woods. But having said that, the OnX app it's an unbelievable tool. I love it and I use it. But you also, like Hal said before, it is an electronic instrument. It can fail. You can have troubles with it. So even if you have OnX or you have a GPS, they're fine. They're great tools. But everybody, if you're in a big piece of woods like Maine, using a compass is not rocket science. If you watch Hal's video on YouTube or talk with one of us, it's not rocket science. everybody that's going to be a big woods hunter should know how to use a compass. The other
That's
things are great too, but everybody should know how to use a compass in the woods because it can save your life, or at the very least, save you a night in the woods.
Absolutely.
Mark,
Absolutely.
and the reason I asked this question is because I know a lot of people I've talked to, they don't have that internal compass. So I've kind of tried to teach them some what I can kind of teach them what I know about navigation. And my wife, as a former cop, I had to know exactly where I was at, east, southwest, whatever the case may be, because there was times where in FTO phase you'd get asked, all right, if we went here, how do we get back? And you got to tell me southwest direction. You can't tell me left, right, such and such. And I've always told my wife or my other friends of just gather where you're at right now and figure out what's north, and now just kind of base yourself off of that. And I think navigation is a big thing to know. And then I think learning a compass is kind of, in my mind, a lost art form. We were
Yeah.
talking earlier, though, about goals, and Neil kind of made me want to ask this question now. Me as a bow hunter, I only hunt with a bow. I'll never pick up a gun. Even the day I can't draw back a bow, I'm going to pick up a crossbow. But for someone coming out to Maine, and I know it's very thick out there, and I know the deer population is probably not the best or the highest from what I've been hearing. What would be a realistic goal for someone that's used to sitting in a tree stand only bow hunting? So if I'm coming out there to Maine, what would my goals should be, realistic goals, and not just those, oh, I'm going to shoot the biggest buck out there in Maine?
Jeff?
Yeah, well, you're gonna be crazy to do it for one thing, because it's gonna be long hours in the saddle. Because we get asked that a lot in our seminars. But with that being said, the reward is the pinnacle, no question about it. Because if you're going to be hunting mature bucks up there, because those bucks up there, there's no patents to them. They just basically roam around. You're not going to time them, patent them, or anything like that. And to sit on a mature buck up there, it's going to take a lot of work, no question about it. I mean, it's hours and hours and hours in the saddle. So your expectation of a trophy, if you're going to hunt for weight or you're hunting for trophy, you're going to have to bring it down. You know, you're not going to sit there for weeks on end and want to shoot a 160-inch deer, a 140-inch deer. Your expectations has to be to shoot a deer, because at the end of the day, to shoot a buck in the big woods up in the North Country, whether it be in Maine, New Hampshire, or even the Adirondacks and those deep woods out there, just to shoot a deer is the trophy, you know. And I have all the respect in the world for anybody that wants to do it. More so, and it's not, and I gun hunt, but I have more respect for a bow hunter that'll sit in a tree stand in the big woods for weeks on end and maybe see 3 deer. And out of those 3 deer, you might get a chance at 1, you know. So it's definitely a tough game. It's not for everybody. So, like I said, your expectations are going to be different. It's not like sitting on a field.
On the flip side of that, Jeff, I would also point out that northern Maine is one place that you have a real chance of shooting a once-in-a-lifetime buck.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of 4.5 and older bucks. The bucks up here die of old age.
Yep.
So it is one place that you really have a good chance. And I mean a heavy buck, but also we have some big racked bucks here, some really tremendously big ones. It's just that they're not behind every tree, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm saying, you know, you're a bow hunter. Neil's a bow hunter. to do this in a, I call it the 3,300 roll. Anybody with a gun's going to take a poke at a deer at 300 yards, no question about it. But to get a deer within 30 yards, it takes a lot more. I'm not going to say skill, but it takes a lot more energy, a lot more of your knowledge to get that deer, and patience to get them within 30 yards to get that optimum shot. So I agree with Hal. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying that if you go up to the big woods and you score on a big mature buck, I mean, holy smoke! To me, that's the pinnacle. There's nothing higher than that, because it's a tough game. I've sat in those trees for days on end. I know what it takes. Neil knows what it takes. But it's fun though. I gotta admit, it's fun. But I'm a patient guy, so.
Well, and then too, it's like, as I said earlier, I think a lot of it's going to come down to the experience. And so, because that opportunity, if you're blessed to have an opportunity, it might be at that buck of a lifetime, but it might not be one you could even capitalize on. It might be that you just happen to jump that buck up, you saw him for a split second, and you were too slow. And you can't beat yourself up about that, but because you came and you had that experience, and that if you were a little better, a little quicker, you could have gotten it done. Or it may be maybe you get on a track and maybe you catch up to a spike horn, and you have to make that choice. It's like, do I want to shoot this deer? It's like, and would I be happy with it? Did I accomplish that goal, that mission? Or do you let him walk? It's if you even have enough time to think about it. So it would really be just kind of like what that experience is, or maybe it's just, if you're not good with navigating, that you actually got more comfortable venturing away from your truck and just forgetting about the fear of getting lost. Maybe for some guys, it's spending all day, like Jeff said earlier. It's like we're driven. We're going to go dark to dark, and we've sometimes made mile-long walks to our truck back after dark. Maybe just that part of the experience is a win for that person that comes up here to hunt. But really, it's like, I don't think you can set a goal around the size of the deer or the caliber of the rack or anything. It's just looking at what that experience is going to mean to you and what you're going to take from it and what you put into it during the time that you were here.
Yeah, just to that point, Neil, listen, I mean, I've dragged stand. I'm sure we've dragged stands out in those woods a mile, 2 miles out in them woods, to get in the optimum spot. And once you're there, there's nothing like it, because you're a mile, you're 2 miles out, so to speak, and you're in that spot. There's nobody else around. It's just you and Mr. Big. And it's like a Christmas present. When he shows up, it's the biggest high that you can ever have. And you have that chance to make the big splash. And there's nothing like it. It makes the hair stand on your back and your neck, So it's an amazing thing if you can do it.
Yeah. Knowing what I know now, or at my age and what I've done, if I was going to set a goal, I would want to be woods comfortable. So I think all of the things that lead, like being able to read the woods, not just look at the woods, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And for reading the woods allows you to your stand placement. And Hal wrote this in his first book. He wrote a chapter on stand hunting, he wrote a chapter on still hunting, and he wrote a chapter on tracking. All of those components revolve around just what I said, being able to read the woods and what those deer are doing, whether it's on bare ground or in snow. And that's applicable to any place that you go, any place.
Yeah.
It'll make you a way better hunter and a way better experience, whether you kill a deer or not. And the last thing I'll say, like Jeff said, when you're out there, you're living with the animals. And I don't care where you are, you're living with the animals. I live in a suburban neighborhood, and there's a whole world going on. I tell my neighbors all the time, there's a whole world going on around you that you never see.
That's so true.
If you're not in tune with it. And I tell them those experiences, and they can't believe the deer that I see right around here, or the bobcats or whatever. So it just killing is cool, but the whole experience makes it the best.
Yeah. I think like to one last thing is like educating yourself about whitetail, their habits, is just a key component. Once you educate yourself to them and you understand what they want, what they're looking for, especially in the big woods, if you can understand all that, I'm not saying it's a easier road, but it's easier to get to where you got to go. And that's the same as hunting out west, down south, is once you educate yourself to the deer, what they want, what they're looking for, especially the bucks. And it makes the job just a little bit easier, but it makes it fun, because now you're learning their habits and you're learning everything.
Yeah.
And that's to me, as a bow hunter, that's always been other than the wind, it's always been the key component to be successful is educating yourself what they are looking for. Most people walk in the woods and they just walk right to the center of the woods and they forget about the beginning. Well, the deer are not in the middle, they're typically on the edges. And you learn that as you hunt over the years. But it's just enough that you're just educating yourself and you're educating what the deer and their habits, so to speak.
I'd sum it all up by saying this, and this is what I found out over guiding up here for 35 years. These guys talk about the experience, and that's really what it is. And some people will like the experience of it and some won't. So I always knew that, from having clients come and go, that you either love it or you hate it. There doesn't seem to be anything in between. And people, I've had clients come year after year and never shoot a deer, but they just love being out in the woods, and they could see the sign, they knew what was there, and they loved it. And other ones, I think, even though I always tried to not paint the big rosy picture, others would hate it. Someone would leave the middle of the week, they weren't seeing enough deer, or the woods was too big, or there was something, and they were never going to do it again. But you're never going to know that unless you give it a try. Like I remember last year, you had some young fellas come up from Rhode Island, and one of them shot first morning out, he shoots a 10-pointer that dressed 220.
Nice.
So it can happen anytime, but you love it or you hate it. But I would encourage everybody to at least give it a try. And I don't mean they got to come out here to Maine, but you could go up in your area up to the UP and try it, or there's plenty of big pieces up in there. But it's just it's like hunting a different animal anyway. So I encourage people to give it a try.
And if you want some motivation, you got to watch Hal's film. If you just look it up on YouTube, No Boundaries. I'm telling you, it gives me goosebumps every time I watch it. Because for those of us who love it, it gets you jazzed up to go out there. So if you're looking to do it, just watch that film, No Boundaries.
Yeah, Jeff pointed earlier, I think knowledge is power, and knowing whitetail deer in and out. I think how they operate, what they're doing day in and day out, month in and month out. It's going to change your whole hunting perspective in a way, and you're going to better yourself. The more you read, the more you learn about them themselves. And
I want to jump in just to say one quick thing too is integrate yourself into a camp with some old timers. If you got old timers that have been hunting the big woods their whole lives, they love to hear your stories and they love to teach. A lot of them do. Some are very private and stuff, but if you can get yourself into a camp and say, listen, I'd like to be a part of this, I'd like to learn. They love that. When I'm in the Adirondacks, I'm in a camp with a bunch of guys that have been around forever and a day, and they're expert trackers, and they love hearing my ridiculous stories as much as I like hearing their legitimate stories, right? Yeah. And you can learn you can cut down a decade's worth of trial and error by listening to these guys. So if you're young, integrate yourself into one of those camps. I guarantee if it's a good camp, they'll like having you there.
So Brett, we built a system. It's called the Big Woods Buck system. And so Hal and I sat and he kind of built the system as he learned from the deer while he was learning all this before we started Big Woods. And so we broke it down into a Big Woods. It's called the Big Woods Buck system. It's on our website, and we got a lot of videos about that. But one of the things that we figured out was knowledge equals confidence, and confidence equals success. If you don't have that combination, you're not going to get anywhere. So, and the knowledge part of it, have fun learning it. Don't get down on yourself. Have fun learning on it, because it's a learned ability. Not everybody's gifted. I wasn't. I'm still not, but I'm the best that I can be because I'm surrounded by these guys. They share all this stuff with me, and I've practiced. It's a rush. Whether you bow hunt, still hunt, or gun hunt, or whatever you do, it's a rush.
Mark, that comment you made about getting around old timers and learning the stories that they have, that brought up an article that I remember reading was the human brain remembers more from sharing stories than actual reading something on paper. And I'm not saying don't read stuff out of a book. I mean, obviously read the books, but you can kind of sink stuff in more of, if you say you read the book and then you go talk to these other people and you can sink that story in more and kind of get more of a better understanding of what you read.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Because oral tradition was stories, right? That's how the human brain is constructed. That's how the human mind is constructed. So, yeah, for sure. And when you sit around those camps, first of all, it's hilarious, right? You're all just making fun of yourselves, and it's the best. It's the best time of my life. It really is. Every year I look so forward to it. So, telling stories is where it's at.
That's how we built our podcast, because Joe Cruzy came to me, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, and he said, I want to do a podcast. I'm like, what the hell's a podcast? We got talking about it, and we said, well, I remembered from thousands of people that we talked over the years at trade shows, people always ask us, what's it like being at deer camp with you guys? Well, that's how we built it. I made sure that the guys got together, were in one room when we first started off, because there's a synergy that happens when you have it's cool to do this, but it's even better when people are around each other, like we talk about in the camp. And lots of comments have been made about they feel like they're at deer camp with us when they're on the podcast. So I totally agree with what Mark said, that it's hearing those stories together with that camaraderie can be really effective.
Yeah. Well, guys, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I already feel bad showing up late to the party here, but is there a story or a topic you didn't get to share or we didn't get to cover tonight before we kind of close out for tonight?
Just thanks for having us, Brett.
Yeah, we could go on for hours.
I would just tag on a little bit to what Mark said about getting around people, and if you've got listeners there that don't have access to that, I still have a few openings at the lodge this fall if anybody wants to make the pilgrimage out. We actually have people every year from Michigan and Wisconsin that hunt with us, and but I have a few openings the first week, which is first week in November, and then Thanksgiving week. I have a few openings for the American plan, and that's you go on your own, and we feed you and house you, and we'll tell you places to go, and you'll share in the camp life with everybody else at the lodge and mealtime, and it's like being in a big hunting camp, really.
It's one of the best experiences I've ever had. I went up there last year because I never hunted in that area, and I mean, the food was amazing. It's just, being up there, the camaraderie afterwards, hearing the story, because you have guys that are coming up there for the first time, sharing their adventures of the day. You have the guides who, took clients out and they're sharing, their stories from the day, but everyone sits around, has dinner, breakfast is made for you. That morning you have pre-made sandwiches, cookies in bags. It's like whatever you need ready for the day. So just the stories were phenomenal up there, and it was a great group of people. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Oh, I got a story.
Let's hear it.
Not you, Jeff.
Oh no.
So remember that time, Hal, I was hunting up there off by the Golden Road. My buddy ended up getting hurt. I was tent hunting, so I was up there all by myself, and I probably 3-4 days into it. I was having a good time, but there was nothing to read at all in that tent. And I said, well, I'm going to go in the town. I'm going to drive. It was like a 45-minute drive or an hour drive all the way to the lodge where Hal and the guys were. So I drove all the way down there, and I walk in the lodge and saying hi to everybody. We're laughing. He goes, hey, you guys got anything to read here? Because it is so boring up that tent by myself. I got nothing to read. So they had no magazines or nothing. So Hal turns around and gives me his book. He said, hey, read this. I said, the Hal blood tracking book. I said, oh, that's good. I'm going to go all the way back to the tent and read that book. So I brought Hal's tracking. It's actually right here. Hold on.
Hal, did you pay him to plug your book?
I'd actually forgot about that.
Remember that, Hal?
I was trying to keep it from Chris was giving away a book.
I know what in the hell is going on here.
Did I sign it, Jeff?
You signed it. Said something about the trail. I said you signed it like you sign everyone. It says,
Oh, yeah.
that's good. I'm gonna go back to the tent, read Hal's book. I said I'm around him all the time. He gives me his own book. I said good. I spent a week reading his book. It was very informative.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Anyone else have any other stories?
We don't have enough time for the stories, though.
That's true.
We get a lot of years.
On stories, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, come on again.
Yeah, for sure. We'll just make it a story time.
There you go.
There you go. We got plenty of them.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, well, we haven't heard from Lee in a while. I'd like to hear some closing remarks from Lee.
Yeah.
You still up? Still awake?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, close us out.
All right. I guess we were talking about having people come from other states and what their expectations and everything are. The majority of the time, I've got somebody with me that is from another state. And what I found out over the years, going back to what Hal said, was I break it up instead of half, it's like thirds, but a third of the people, they come and you don't care if they ever come back. And about a third of them, they come and they're good people and they had a good time, but maybe they'll be back, maybe they won't. But about a third of them get hooked, whether they get a deer or whether they don't. For the first time in their life, it was all about a sense of freedom and a sense of adventure. When I started Shanz's Guide Service 24 years ago, my motto was adventure in the outdoors. And I think that's the biggest part of the draw for Big Woods Bucks too, is we don't just provide you with a kill, we provide you with an adventure. And I think that there's a lot of people out there looking for that.
Perfect way to end it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. That's a perfect way to end it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you for coming on. Again, I apologize for being late to the party here. I'd love to have you guys back on here when we can. Again, I just can't say thank you enough. I really do appreciate it, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. I'll talk to you later. Have a good rest of your night.
All right,
you
you
too.
too. Take care.
Bye now.
Yep.
Oh, man. What a wealth of knowledge that's right there with everyone there. And the stories that I'm sure we could just sit around an actual campfire and talk and hear and listen to them share their stories. I feel like we could just be there for hours on end. And next thing you know, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. We're just up sharing stories all night long. I'd like to say thank you again, even though everyone's gone. Thank you, everyone from Big Woods Bucks, for coming on the show. Thank you, everyone, for out there listening to the podcast. Thank you for sharing the show. I'm not going to go on a whole spiel at the ending of the intro. So, you know what? I just want to say thank you enough. Say thank you. And I really do appreciate everything you guys are doing out there and supporting the show. With that being said, we're just going to end it tonight and see you guys next week.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.